You are listening to the Rogue Patriot podcast, where we are taking the name Patriot back from the right-wing extremists and returning it to the people who actually love and defend the country and have its best interests at heart. Today we're going to have a quick discussion over party politics with my co-host, Selena. Say hi, Selena.
Hey.
All right, so one of the big things that it dominates every discussion, and I truly mean every discussion in the current times, is your opinion means, or rather your opinion decides which party you're part of. And your opinion of absolutely anything and everything has a party attached to it. For example, given the recent climate of misjustice and police brutality, there are only two opinions according to the mainstream media and mainstream politics. And which one of those opinions you have determines which party you're part of. Either there is no problem whatsoever, which means you're a Republican, or the entire system is a problem and needs to be torn down. You're a Democrat. This is ridiculous. It leads to constant arguments, no middle ground, and as the end result, no work actually ever gets done in the country, and these problems don't ever get resolved because everybody's too busy arguing amongst themselves. So this is one thing that we can take a little bit of old American history and reflect on it in this current climate. So originally, around the founding of the country, the founding fathers did not like the idea of parties. To them, it reminded them of factions that had England in brutal civil wars in the 17th century. And they considered parties or factions, which is what they were called then, as corrupt relics of a monarchical British system that they wanted to discard in favor of a truly democratic government. So the end result, or at least the current result, is very close to what their worst fear was. And this has been the case a few times in American history, but is really present right now. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we can't have a discussion amongst family members or friends where there isn't constant name calling, or where the sources of facts are just questioned constantly, just till the end of time. If you say something somebody disagrees with, then wherever you got that information is fake, or you're clueless, have no idea what you're talking about because you are a Democrat or because you are a Republican. So this is something that I think everybody has experienced in their personal life, and is a departure from where we were a few decades ago, where these things were a little bit easier to talk about. So the founders didn't like parties. And essentially my opinion is that parties are a way for the political and corporate elites to draw power for their real motives in the populace. And what I mean by that is, if you can convince a whole bunch of people to get on your side of the fence, you have the power to do whatever you want. I don't think this is really conspiratorial either, because, I mean, we know that mainstream party leaders say one thing and do another frequently. They contradict themselves frequently, and their power grabs frequently. So anybody who defends their party to the ends of the earth and the people leading it, I think, is not really going to be able to listen to this or to have any discussion about this, because they see no wrong. And you can't really convince anybody of anything in this climate. Somebody already has to have an open mind for them to take any insight from a discussion.
Okay, so let me just kind of hop in here on that point.
Please do.
So my opinion with people basically being married to whatever party that they are in is, I compare it basically to sports. Like, you have this person for this sports team and this person for this sports team. Doesn't matter how much their team win or loses, their team is the best. And it causes a lot of arguments with people, which, again, I know it's just sports, but some people take it really serious. And it's like now our politics are something else for this country to argue about. And it seems like America, while it is great, seems to have this this pattern of always having something to argue about, always being on one of two sides. Everything is very black and white. There's no gray area. Everything is you either belong to this side or that side. There is no in between. And both parties are going to think that they are 100% right while the other is 100% wrong. Which, like you've stated already, that's not the case. That's a very ignorant way to think over anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so I compare it a lot to sports just because it's something else for the country to fight about, something else for people to go at war over. As if there's not enough war and conflict in the world, we've got to have it in our own country as well.
Over like very plain issues, very easy to see issues where there's somebody. I mean, there's some issues in politics or in ideas or ideologies where your opinion doesn't directly affect somebody else. It's just kind of like an idea you have or a principle you have.
Right.
That, to me, doesn't really matter in the sense of it's not going to harm anybody on either end because you just feel a certain way about something. But the point we're at now is there are very finite issues that do directly affect people's lives. And we're all too busy arguing about it over obscure points.
Instead of coming up with a solution that benefits everyone.
Right.
And what's sad is when it's actually something that is very easily seen with a solution. Like you can find one very easily. But people are so stubborn that they might have to possibly agree with the opposite side that it prevents any decision being made.
Yeah, absolutely. The example that comes to my mind right off the bat with that is the Puerto Rico hurricane relief. I mean, that is just an insane for at least the entire 1900s and certainly all in the 2000s, when a U.S. territory or state is devastated from a natural disaster, the federal government helps and provides aid. And there is a gigantic apparatus in the federal government for that exact purpose. FEMA's either all of it or the main part of it.
Yeah. And a lot of people not knowing, they speak on something that they don't know about. And I, by no means, I am not a my major is not in politics and my own personal interest is not in politics, not the main point. But something that I found with, speaking of Puerto Rico, was when I would talk to people about that is they would be like, well, why would we help foreigners? Why would we, provide money for them and stuff? And I was like, wait, is it another country? I thought it was part of our territory. And then when you tell them that it is, it's like they're still, immigrants. They're still aliens. We should not have any, resources going to them. They should work for stuff like we Americans have. And it's like, okay, so you're fine with them paying taxes and everything. And I actually had some people be like, yeah, totally. And it's like, so they can give into the system, but they shouldn't benefit from the system. Yeah.
So that is a perfect example in my mind of there are these issues. Well, let me rephrase that. There are these people that are a part of the parties, either directly or indirectly, and their job is to just manufacture opinions on things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know this to be a fact. I'm not saying this is literally true, but this is like how it turns out to be. And they create these opinions, and then they create these like little one-liners that people say.
Or that get posted on Facebook as memes.
Exactly. And
everybody posts it like it's facts, like it's articles that are facts. I saw an article just 2 days ago it was an article that CNN had like shared on their site, but the person did a screenshot of the article like it was shared directly from their site and then put text over it like it was, and it was a one-liner. Yep. And I'm not saying I agree 100% with CNN or anything that they share, but to Photoshop something or to screenshot something and then put text over it as if it's facts or the main point of that article, to me, it's as bad. Growing up in a strict Christian family, it's as bad as quoting one Bible verse, but yet you don't read the 5 before or the 5 after that help explain the one that you're preaching to people,
right?
Which will also contradict what you are preaching to people.
And that is exactly what these people take advantage of. And these people, not the people who are sharing it, the people who are creating it, because all it takes is one line. It was one line, and that will stick in people's heads. And if you're really, really persistent in watching the news and the news cycle, whether it's politics, current events, or whatever, you'll see this happen. It'll be like a throwaway line on Tucker Carlson or one of these pundit shows, Rachel Maddow, something like that. And all of a sudden, that line is the way an army of people think about something.
Well, I think it's also what presidents preach a lot when they're running for like you have their great sayings, like Trump is "Make America Great Again." Obama's was
hope and change.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they get so pervasive, and then they turn into these Facebook memes, and then it just spreads on and on and on. But there's nothing behind it, and they fall apart under questioning, and it's like it's like pulling out a Bible verse and not sharing any of the context.
Exactly.
But the thing here is that a lot of the times in politics, there's not a clear line between why these different parties have these different opinions on issues. For example, for at least our entire lifetimes, we're both millennials, but going at least as far back as I think Eisenhower in the 50s, the Republican Party has been the party of small federal government. More governmental power lies with the states than with the feds. The federal budget is small. There are very few services provided at the federal level. The federal government's main job is to levy taxes, control the import and export of goods, and to maintain a military. That has been the platform of the Republican Party for a long time, and stated it probably still is. And one of the things that you'll hear people talk about a lot, you'll hear people who are Republicans talk about this more than anybody else, are individual liberty, individual freedom, personal responsibility, government off my back, these kind of things. But what doesn't line up is take all of that, and I don't think there was anything controversial in what I just said. I think everybody would agree that is what it has been. Okay, so take that and align that with now the general Republican Party's view on police brutality and police control, and make those two opinions fit together. So now we have the party of individual freedom, personal responsibility, but that same party is now also accepting and defending of almost unlimited authority of the police, who are the number one agents in line to steal your personal freedom, your individual freedom and liberty.
Exactly.
How does that make sense? Well, it doesn't. And there's nobody that can connect those dots, but there's a lot of hucksters that will sell you on those ideas. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because the people who run these parties, they don't have any morality. They don't have any governing viewpoints. They're not principled people.
Well, I don't even think
they take advantage of these big opinions in the population and then steal them for themselves to try to get more votes.
Yeah, but I don't even think it's just them. I mean, I think the people that also go around saying that they can't really have any morals either, because when you're not trying to connect if you're not connecting the dots and you're not thinking for yourself, you're following someone blindly, you have no interest in helping better the country or better people's situations or fighting for America and it's what it was built on. So with one of the most recent events that I can think of that has to do with what you're talking about is when the police were marching down the streets after riots and then shooting people with pellet guns while they were sitting on their own porches. They weren't the rioters. They weren't the people that were actually out here destroying something or even peacefully protesting. These were people who were sitting on their porch, minding their own business. And this horde, and that's what I'm going to call it, a horde of law enforcement is walking down the streets and yelling at them and telling they're not even out in their yard. They're on their porch and shooting at them. So, and it's sad because I grew up in more of a environment where there's more of the patriot term used, but it's used incorrectly. and it's more Republican views. And I grew up around more people like that were fight for your freedom. This country's great, greatest country in the world. And they always said that they stood by the American values, and they always acted like they wanted what was best for the country and to not have government rule them. So these same people will get on social media, Facebook, for example. I've seen a lot of this to where they will post one meme or something that says, oh, let the government come and try to take my guns. You know, this is my freedom, this is my right. And then in the next one, they're sharing how it was okay for these police officers or law enforcement, whatever you want to call them, to walk down these streets shooting people in their own yards on their own porch that belongs to their own house, which in my opinion is going against these people's freedom, because this is on their own property that they pay for, which I thought the more Republican conservative view of things is that your property, your right. And that's what you're fighting for. But then you're turning around and supporting the cops doing it because you disagreed with the overall idea of, oh, well, they were doing it because of rioters and protesters. And you didn't agree with those rioters and protesters. So now it's okay for them to do it to these people. And these people weren't even the rioters and protesters.
Right.
So that is giving government power. That is giving law enforcement power. But then you're turning around and posting about how government's not going to come take your guns because that is your right. So where is the line drawn between your rights of owning guns and government not having that power, but their rights of sitting on their own porch?
Exactly. The whole point of the Bill of Rights is to defend people's rights when it's not easy to, meaning that it's defending the rights of people you don't agree with, because people who all have the same opinion need no defense from each other. They all have the same opinion. That's a good point. Private property rights has also been a central tenet of the Republican Party. We're doing a lot of beating up on the Republican Party this time, but just because that's how it fits into the narrative. Neither of us belong to any political party. But anyway, so yeah, private property rights, huge. Every time there's a self-defense shooting, when it happens on somebody's property or on their house, you will hear private property rights brought up. Anytime there's a dispute over a business serving somebody, like the people who wouldn't make the cake for the gay wedding, private property rights issue. Those are all private property issues that the Republicans had a real fun time of owning then. But now, when they disagree with the people who are on the private property, it's not a private property issue anymore.
So this is going to kind of go away from the topic that we're discussing, but let's go back to the bakers. You know, it's their right to deny baking a cake for a gay couple because, it is, if it has to do with their religion, whatever, it's their right. My personal opinion, I have a few. One being that, well, the gay couple can go somewhere else. You don't have to go to that bakery. You don't have to make their lives harder trying to sue them or anything else. But I can also look at it the other way. Why is your religion on a business in America that is for all freedom denying someone a service because they are different and have different views from you? Now, having said that, the same people that I know for a fact, again, growing up in much more of a very conservative mindset, in a very country town, that's nothing but you're Republican or conservative. If you're Democrat, you're wrong. If you're liberal, you're wrong. But the same people that was, oh, well, that's their right. That's their business. That's against their religion. That is their right. Regardless that it was inflicting on someone else's service, maybe not their rights, but the service provided. Nowadays, let's bring it something that's more current is with COVID-19. Businesses requiring masks. But now those same people that said, oh, that's their business, that's their right not to serve a gay couple. Now, all of a sudden, it is not the business's rights to enforce the wearing of masks.
Right.
So
we're flipping and flopping all over the place here.
Exactly.
We're twisting into a pretzel to align ourselves with
Which means you're not having values, you're not having morals, you're not sticking to anything. You're going whichever way the wind blows you for that day, for that political stance. And that's not the way it should be. Either you think something is right or wrong, stick with it, right or wrong. I'm not saying that there's not topics that get a little bit iffy. For instance, abortion. You know, some people think abortion's wrong, it's murder. Others are on the direct line that no, it's not, you know. So some people say you shouldn't allow it at all. Others say that you should. So having said that, there are some people that are more in a gray area of, I think it should be allowed for women who have health conditions or issues, or, you know, they're raped or something, then they should be allowed. But someone just getting pregnant should not be allowed. So I think there's way too much flipping back and forth on what you support, depending, like, as if there's not a gray area or a median or something that makes everyone happy.
Right. And that's definitely what's going on. And I don't think this is another funny aspect of this problem, is that I bet you almost everybody would agree with that. But none of those people realize they're the ones doing it as well, because they've got this handcrafted justification for wherever the wind is blowing. But the problem is, the wind doesn't blow itself. Somebody is blowing that wind and blowing all these people along with it, and ultimately capitalizing on that in one way or another. Either it's to get votes, or it's to, you know, justify a position, it's to justify a business, a strategy, something. The people who run politics in this country are not the candidates themselves. It's the people behind the scenes that are incredibly powerful, and they know how to manufacture this stuff. And they're the ones that ultimately have a lot of the control. This is nothing that a president says, or that major candidates say, or that people in Congress say. The stuff that they say isn't just coming out of their head. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. It's going through focus groups. It's going through tons of experts in the field as to how to capture attention and get people on their side.
Yeah.
It's just
what's popular in that crowd too.
Exactly. It's just like behind the scenes of reality TV. You think everything's just falling together how it looks like on camera? No, there's scripts. They're filming scenes over again. They're doing all this stuff to make it into this product that they're then selling. The product they're selling is reality, the same way that politics is, frankly. Politics and reality TV aren't all that different. Both very manufactured, and not a whole lot of reality in either one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's an issue, to where people being married to their parties, doesn't matter if the leader of that party, I guess you could say leader, or candidate rather, is right or wrong. They will stick with them until the end. And something that you'll see one of two things. The first being that they will completely support it to the ends of time. It doesn't matter if it's morally right or wrong, if it's by the American standards, values, anything. They stick with it. The other thing that you'll see a lot with these people, if it's not that, then, and this is Republican or Democrat, they excuse their lack of judgment and morals with the better of two evils response.
Right.
So it's, oh, well, I know this, this person isn't, like, something that I heard during when Trump and Hillary were running was that they didn't want to vote for, candidate A because of this. So they were voting for candidate B, but they didn't like candidate B, whatever, because, oh, well, it's the better of two evils. So when people say better of two evils, I mean, to me, I would think, again, coming from a Christian family, evil is evil. Wrong is wrong. There's not really anything that you can do to change the definition of evil. So when you say better of two evils, to me, it's like you're saying you're choosing between Satan and one of his demons. So are you really making a difference for your country, for your family, for yourself, for your community, for anything, if you are just choosing the better of two evils? And what's sad, I think, is a lot of people are so into Republican or Democrat. Like, there's only two parties. When, you have independent.
Right.
You don't have to. And I think if people brought more attention to the independent idea, then maybe more people would start voting independent. Like, me personally, I don't think we should have parties at all. I think you should have candidates that run and state what their purpose is, what they want to achieve during their time in office, and what they plan on doing throughout that, and what their morals are that led them to that decision on why they think the country needs that change or that effort put forward. So, having said that, if it was more of people just saying that instead of, hey, I'm Republican, I read the Bible, love Jesus, there you go. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm Democrat, I support abortion and Black Lives Matters. End of conversation.
Right.
And that's what people are doing. They're announcing a title, a sports team, so to speak, and they're saying the highlights of what is famous for that team instead of just coming up here and being like, hey, my name is John Doe, and then saying what they think the country or how the country should be ran and what they think should be involved in running it. I think it would be a lot better, but people are so busy picking teams that they're blinded for how that there is another option. It could be ran another way. And I think that is how it was probably when the founding fathers were, because there wasn't political parties. So you just heard what someone stood for, and that's what you based your votes off of.
Well, so actually there were political parties then. Here's the key difference though. Currently, political parties, the two main parties, have an enormous amount of control in who gets publicity. And so that allows them, make no mistake, the reason that this country has stayed with two parties for so long is because the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention make sure it stays that way. And they do that through controlling funding, through controlling who can be on debates, through deals with TV networks as to who they display, because it's just like any corporation, they're going to try to corner their market. Absolutely. They're not going to leave any room for a competitor. And they know that their bread is buttered through people acting like they're a sports team. There's not any benefit in either for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. There's no benefit in them allowing any independents on the field. The last time that there was almost an independent elected was Ross Perot in the early 90s running against George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. And he got such a large percentage of the vote after the debates that the Presidential Commission on Debates they changed the rules back then. The Presidential Commission on Debates, Commission of Debates, is made up of leaders from Democratic National Committee, Republican National Committee. And they come together and make the rules of engagement, so to speak, for the debates. Well, guess what? After an independent came on and almost stole the show, they made it a whole hell of a lot harder for an independent to get on that stage.
I believe it.
And so the difference is between now and at the founding, there were some very, very serious, violent political parties and political opposition at the founding of the country. But there were not parties that controlled all of the media. And that's kind of where we're at now, is that these parties have such an unbelievable amount of control in the reach of candidates that nobody can get enough airtime to get on the main stage without their consent. So unless you decide to play by their rules, whether it's DNC or RNC, you're just not going to make it anywhere. And that's really the reason that we stayed with it, because most people do not like the two-party system. Most people think that politics is largely corrupt. These are not far out there ideas. Most people would agree with this. They just don't see their participation as being the problem.
Yeah.
And, this is something that we're going to touch on a lot, this general topic, because it just invades so many different things. And also, a lot of people who are not really students of politics don't know that you only have to go back 15-ish years for a party to have completely changed their opinion on multiple different things. And nobody's going to tell you that. Nobody who has a vested interest in either one of the parties is going to say, hey, my party actually flip-flops like every 10 years on this one issue. We go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're not going to tell you that. Where are you going to get it? You're going to get it on the Rogue Patriot podcast, because this is important to know, and it's interesting. So it's interesting, thought-provoking, at least I think anyway, and hopefully some of our discussions will be entertaining as well. So we're going to do a few different types of things. We'll have discussions like this. Also, we'll have individual breakdowns over, like what we touched on earlier, the mask debate. Where do personal freedoms actually lie when it comes to mask mandates, whether it's by government or by a business? What is the quote unquote American value in that? And what are the limits of it? We'll touch on that same thing also with protests and riots and all those sorts of things. And hopefully we'll have a good time with it all. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to us at the Rogue Patriot Podcast at gmail.com. Also, please like, comment, and subscribe on the podcast. We also have a YouTube channel where all the podcasts are posted, and some of them will be turned into clips as well. Thank you for listening. This has been Scott and Selena. Have a good day.